Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all today? And welcome to Facebook again. We are using two different devices again today. So if you're on YouTube, you're getting one image. And if you're on Facebook, you're getting a totally different image altogether. Both me in my office, just using YouTube, are only getting sort of like the headshot and the shoulders. And those in Facebook get the whole upper body. Anyway, to say good afternoon, folks. Hopefully this will be a rip-roaring good show for you today. Now, a wee update first on the other Davy. The other Davy, I was speaking to him earlier. I didn't get a chance to speak to him over the weekend. I had a very busy weekend. He is being released from hospital today and sent home. His local health team have managed to get the equipment he needs in his home promptly so he can get out of the hospital. So that's great. I'll be speaking to him again tomorrow, and we'll, over the next couple of days, we'll work in collaboration to write Thursday's show. And hopefully we'll get a wee cameo from him on Thursday. Hi, Regan. Let's look who's in. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Tina. Hi, Stephen, over there on Facebook. And hello, everybody on YouTube, because there's a lot of yous. Now, there is an after-show chat, folks, but it's not at 10 o'clock at night. But I'm sure that my good friend and brother, Mad Monk 33, who I see on the stream, will put the correct link into the YouTube chat. And I've got to make him up to some sort of special administrator on the YouTube channel so he can put the link into the wee bit on the display on the YouTube channel. He's more technically minded than mine. So there is the after show chat. It happens at 10 o'clock tonight because, as you know, after the show, I'm straight out the door to go to work. And but on Thursday, I'm off on Thursday. So the after show chat will have two sessions on Thursday. Right after the show, Hugh, if you can remember that, and put the link up. Right after the show on Thursday. And once again at 10 o'clock at night on Thursday for the two different groups. Okay. Right. So we're up there. We're at the 100 mark. So let's get this broadcast underway. Now we're going to start off with a comedy gold story here in Scotland this weekend. And in light of what's been going on in England, it might not seem funny to any viewers working in England, but it's funny to the people here in Scotland, I can assure you. Anyway, for the good people here in Scotland who like a wee bit of comedy gold, here's a name for you. Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon. And if anybody doesn't know who that is, that's AKA EDL, English Defence League leader, Tommy Robertson. Anyway, what's Tommy Robson go to do with Scotland? Sorry, not Robertson, Robson. What's he go to do with Scotland? Well, as we know, Tommy has been fearlessly leading the right-wing riots in England from the safety of his holiday condo in Cyprus. You couldn't make it up. Anyway, Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, a.k.a. Tommy Robinson, he decided he was going to have a wee foray into Scotland and try to ignite some right-wing riots here. So as Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon was scrolling through the Scottish news from the safety of his condo in Cyprus, where he is fearlessly conducting the riots in England with a brave boy. Anyway, he stumbles across an incident, a domestic incident in Stirling. And he tries to inflame the good people of Stirlingshire, by claiming that this domestic incident was actually an illegal immigrant chibbing a wee woman in Stirling. And of course, the people of Stirling, on hearing this from Mr. Yaxley Lennon, started fucking laughing. Why did they start laughing? Well, Stirling has a population of 38,730 people. and they all know each other. It's one big village. You know, we call it a city here in Scotland, but there's a housing estates. There's housing estates in the East End of Glasgow who have got more of a population. I mean, you couldn't make it up. Anyway, this makes Police Scotland intervene to tell the locals what they already knew, and that was that this was a domestic abuse incident, and the 29-year-old white local man was in custody, and that a similar aged young woman was being seen to in hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. No religion was mentioned in the case, by the way. We don't know whether it was a white Christian, a white a white Christian, a white Muslim, a white Jew, a white, no religion been mentioned here whatsoever. Anyway, after Police Scotland tell the people of Stirling what they already bloody know, because they all know each other. In fact, they knew about the incident before Police Scotland did. Anyway, this prompts the First Minister to get involved. And Mr. Swinney promptly appears upon our screens with a wry smile and a wee chuckle in his voice, telling the Scottish people not to buy into this shite. As I say, shouldn't laugh. Shouldn't laugh at all, because it is serious in England, you know. But imagine trying that push here. But as a start, Scotland's 97% white, and we tend to value the people who come and live here. We realise that they're an economic bonus, a boon, as well as a cultural bonus, which adds diversely to the tapestry of life here in Scotland. So, the chances of starving in Stirling being done by an illegal migrant are slim to fuck all. We are 97% white population according to the last census. It would appear that Mr. Yaxley Lennon, not very bright as he is, hasn't done his homework. But to stop laughing for a minute, I'm going to get serious on this one, and we'll cover it more when we get to the UK-wide section of the show, Articles 6 to Articles 10 in this particular report. But there is a couple of serious things here that does need to be spoken about here in Scotland, even though Mr. Swinney did tell us to behave ourselves tongue-in-cheek, because he was too busy laughing like the rest of us at this idiot Yaxley Lennon, or Tommy Robson, if you want to give him his AKA, leader of the English Defence League. Couple of things of seriousness. Scotland does have its problems, folks. Domestic violence being one of them. Violence against men, women and children at home. It's a serious issue, and we really need to address it. And the other issue here was the attempt to stir up racial hate. As I say, here in Scotland, we value the people who come and live here. We see them as a boon to our economy. We see them as adding culturally to our lives, and we see them adding wonderfully to the tapestry that is life here in Scotland. But racism does exist, and we must clamp down on it at every opportunity. If you see some kids, thanks to others, if you see some people harassing our Asian neighbours, our African neighbours, our West Indian neighbours, if you see it, step in, put a stop to it. We're Oddjock Tamson's bairns here. Oddjock Tamson's bairns. So that's a serious point to be brought up in this. Although it was absolutely stupid of Mr. Robertson or Yaxley Lennon to think he could stir up this sort of stupidness here in Scotland. Racism does exist. And the story of the domestic assault in Stirling is a shame on us all. A shame on us all. Okay, so that's the serious side, even though we can have a laugh at Mr. Yaxley Lennon, who is bravely and fearlessly tearing up England from the safety of his condo in fucking Cyprus. Right, let's move on to another bit of comedy here in Scotland this week, shall we? Let's move on. There'll be no riots here, thank you very much, children. we're not in the habit of setting our own house on fire. And the people who come to live here, we tend to treat them like brothers and sisters the way we would anybody else. Right, moving on. Where are we? Aye, number 2. Moving on. 2 more contenders throw their hats in the ring to become branch office manager of the Tories in Scotland. The runners and riders on the 3-legged nag race in Scotland are MSP, former athlete and journalist Russell Findlay, MSP, an all-round underwhelming character, Brian Whittle, current deputy leader of the branch office, Margaret Gallagher, who her, I hear you say, bugger if I know, and that was and past deputy leader of the Scottish Tories as well, is Liam Kerr. Now, Liam's the latest to throw his hat in the ring to mount a 3-legged nag. By the way, the reward for winning that race, for the 3-legged nag race, is the Poison Chalice, which is the branch office of the Tories here in Scotland. All right, now it would appear that this contest will be settled some point in September, when we will know which of these duffers, has-beens and non-entities actually wins the Poison Chalice of branch office manager here in Scotland. Now, my money is on Liam Kerr, because Liam has had various shadow cabinet positions in the Tories, and he was even deputy leader, as I say, under Car Crash. Remember Car Crash? Failed businessman, failed salesman, failed art thief, an all-round failed leader of the Conservative Party, Jackson Callow. Well, Liam Kerr was his deputy leader, and he's my front runner anyway, so we'll see what happens. But yep, definitely rain, spoilt for choice. 4 duffers that none of us have ever heard of, and it won't really matter, they ain't never getting into power here in Scotland anyway, Right, so that covers the Tory contest for leadership of the branch office here in Scotland. Right, this week's Scottish Health Provision Shite report from the BBC goes on the lack of an appointment of a Patient Safety Commissioner. A what? I hear you say. A Patient Safety Commissioner. Last year in September, legislation was passed after some study in England to appoint a new board, an independent watchdog which would oversee healthcare providers in Scotland and be able to pull them up short and sanction them. And to head up this new body that's been created last September, they were looking for a commissioner to lead the body. Anyway, in April, they held a round of interviews. That was April this year. Okay. Now, after the round of interviews, the cross-party committee, who are to appoint the commissioner, didn't fancy any of the candidates who'd put themselves forward. So they decided at the end of June that this wasn't good enough and that they were going to re-advertise the position. Okay, so if any of you guys out there watching this programme are qualified to be a healthcare commissioner, you'll find the details on the Scottish Government's website. Anyway, less than 12 months since this new law to create this new body come into place, and there is no new commissioner. This is a non-story, but it's another contrived BBC piece of shit that says SNP bad, Scottish Government bad, Scottish healthcare provision shite, Scottish people shite and everything about Scotland shite, because that's what the BBC does in Scotland. From morning, noon to night, it pumps into our homes via the radio and television that we are inadequate human beings and that we are shite at everything. So this non-story, and you say, why is it a non-story, Davy? I'll tell you why it's a non-story. Because for the last 80 years, the NHS has gone just pretty well fine without a patient safety commissioner. And the government's managed to scrutinise the NHS reasonably well in the last 18 years. 80 years, sorry. So if it takes a wee while to find the right person to fill this position, then hell. But here we have it, folks. To go along with the theme of last time out, BBC makes shite up to make the SNP Scottish Government look bad. Wasn't it the SNP Scottish Government that rejected everybody who applied for the job? It was a cross-party committee within the Parliament. That means Labour, Tory, SNP, Lib Dem, Greens. They interviewed the candidates and decided there wasn't anybody good enough. We'll advertise it again. We can wait. We've waited 80 odd years for a patient safety commissioner. I'm sure we can wait a wee bit longer. Mental. So another non-story for the BBC. It's getting pretty bad. Just make it shut up as we go along. Which brings us to what's next. And what's next? Well, our little darlings here in Scotland will be getting their exam results tomorrow. So this week's SNP shite Scottish Government bad stories will be about education. No matter how well our little darlings do tomorrow, and they have year on year improved, the BBC will pick some aspect where it hasn't got any better, or stayed the same, or maybe even got a wee bit worse for the year before, because let's face it, every intake's different, and every child's ability is different. They will pick that one thing, or two things, or three things, and they will tell us that our lovely little children are failing, crushing their hopes for the future up against the rocks of life along the shorelines of the BBC wrecking tides. Because that's what the BBC do. As our little darlings get their results tomorrow, they will be told that it's been made easy for them, that anybody could do it, their achievements are nothing, and their qualifications are worth nothing. And that's what our little darlings will be hearing tomorrow from the BBC, and on Wednesday, and on Thursday, and on Friday. And all by Friday, all 145,000 of the little darlings will have had their dreams and hopes for the future crushed. Thank you, Alistair. Don't half get bored with this pish, folks. It's hard to keep reporting on it. But it's true. No matter how well our children do tomorrow, by Friday, their little dreams and hopes will have been crushed. Because they've been told that their hard work and effort means nothing in the grand scheme of things. And that actually the qualifications are crap because the bad SNP Scottish Government has made things too easy for them to get qualified. Never mind the fact they've knocked their countries in for the last 4 years, working hard to get their qualifications. 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, depending on how long they stayed at school. But forewarned is forearmed. So parents and grandparents, tomorrow morning, when your little darlings are getting the brown envelope through the letterbox, or they are getting their results by app on their phones, switch off the radio and television and keep it off the BBC for the rest of the week. That way, your little darlings will have a hope for the future and won't have their joy and ambitions smashed against the cliffs of BBC negativity. There you go. Grandparents, parents, turn off your televisions this week. Don't have the children's hopes crushed by a biased broadcaster whose main purpose in life is to tell us all how shite we are, how dire our country is, how poor our government is, how crap we are as a people. This is the people that invented the modern world, by the way, and they're still doing it. You'd have no television, no telephone, no ATM, no interweb, no fuck all without us guys. But apparently, according to our imperial masters at the British Broadcasting Corporation, we're shite. So save your little children, your little darlings, the problems that could arise in the future by switching off your radio and television for the rest of the week. Because next week they'll have moved on from education, probably back to transport and the environment, because we'll get bin strikes going on and it looks like there's going to be more railway disruption. Okay. But forewarned is always good. Year after year after year, I hear this as the children's achievements are improving and improving and improving, and our children do so well. The BBC crush them. So just keep it off. All right. Now, before we move on to the madness that's going on down that road, we do have a good news story here in Scotland. And that good news story in Scotland, even the BBC couldn't spin it as a bad news story. So they just reported on it. And that is that our Energy Minister, Mary McCallum, and her husband Ian have had their first child, a baby boy, who they have called Summer Lee, which is quite apt this summer. Yeah, so they've called him Summer Lee, and we'd like to extend our congratulations to Mary and her husband, and may the little bundle of joy bring them fun and a lifetime of love, because that's all really much you can get for children and young adults and dependents. But that is a good news story. Another baby born into a wonderful country. A wee bit of advice from Mary and Ian. Keep the BBC off your telly if you want the child to prosper. There you go. So, congratulations to Mary McCallum and her husband Ian on the birth of the new son. No, even the BBC could spin that as a bad one. All right, let's move on to down that road. Okay, so Labour have now been in power for four weeks. So let's have a wee sort of 4-week review, shall we? Let's get into it. What have we learned? Well, first up, new Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Well, we've learnt that she's a qualified liar. We've also learnt that she's economically illiterate. Which didn't surprise us. She used to work for the Bank of England. Anyway, why is she a liar? Because last week in the State of the State statement, try saying that 3 times fast, to the Westminster Parliament, she told us that on top of the £18 billion black hole in the finances over the term of the next Parliament, due to the cuts in national insurance from the Tories, there was an additional 20 billion black hole year on year up to the year 2029 because of commitments. This one's cracking. Uncosted commitments made by the previous government. Now, this was a new discovery according to Rachel Reeves. Well, that was a fucking news flash to me. the OBR, the IFS, and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation all said that if these uncosted commitments were to be made, then there would be a £20 billion black hole. Now, folks, I want you to listen very carefully to what I've just said there. If these uncosted commitments made by the previous government were to be enacted, there would be an additional £24 billion shortfall in the UK finances per year. Now, I don't know if you heard that right there, folks. This is coming from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the Office for Budget Responsibility, and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Now, let me use that language again for you. So, just prick your ears up. See if you can pick up on it. If these uncosted commitments were to be met, there would be an additional £20 billion black hole in the UK finances year on year, going up to 2029. Now, no candle because democracy did mark. Now think about that. Where did they pull that fucking 20 billion quid figure fee if these were uncosted commitments? Anybody ever get the fucking feeling you're getting the wool pulled out of your eyes here? So the Tories have promised to do more than what they had in their budget. And if the Labour Party were to carry out these commitments that the Tories had made without funding, it would come to the sum total of 20 billion. There are two things there that bothers me. We've got three big so-called financial economic forums: International Institute for Fiscal Studies, Office for Budget Responsibility, and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation telling us if these uncosted commitments were met, it would cost 20 billion. Well, if they were uncosted, where the fuck did they get the figure of 20 billion for? How uncosted commitments? And yet they managed to pull the figure of 20 billion out their arse. She was well saying 40, 60 billion black hole in the UK finances for commitments that were uncosted. Why don't we say 100 billion, a trillion? Talk about pie in the fucking sky. Talk about pulling the wool out of people's eyes. So Rachel Reeves stands up in the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers. And gaslights every fucker. Gaslights them all. And then, of course, the economic literate side here, when we come to Rachel Reeves. So she then tells us she's going to cancel all these projects that haven't been fucking started or costed. So she's going to cancel something that didn't exist. And that would plug the hole. Actually, see all the infrastructure programmes that the Tories had promised but hadn't costed. You know, if she actually invested in them and found the 20 billion, it would contribute hugely to growth of the economy. Let's face it, we are failing infrastructure. Nobody's investing here. And it would appear neither is we're in fucking government. Wow. But I love that term, uncosted commitments. And then they pull a figure that costed it out their arse. Anyway, so what we've learnt is the new Chancellor's an apt liar. An absolute apt liar. Henry, why is the council in Glasgow given a platform allowing this bigoted fascist group? Don't know what bigoted fascist group they're talking about, but Glasgow City Council and the leader, Susan Aiken, made it clear to Mr. Robertson or Yaxley Lennon that him and his mob are no welcome in the city. Right, so far we've learnt in 4 weeks the Chancellor hasn't got a fucking Scooby which she's talking about, and she's quite good at lying. Now, we know that was the truth of Starmer as well. We know he's a liar. But now we know the Chancellor is. And then let's move on to the other big announcement down that road before we get to riots. And that is, the Housing Minister also seems to be an economic fucking illiterate. Angela Rayner tells the English people, this one fucking stunned me, that not just is she going to reintroduce the targets that the Tories had in place up to 2022 to hit 300,000 new builds a year, she was going to up it to 370,000 a year. And she was going to achieve it by tinkering with the planning laws and something called grey belt and green belt land. I thought to myself, sounds all pretty valid. Aye, right. And then I hear the people of England shouting about it. Oh yeah, 370,000 new houses a year. Yeah. Some of them to be council housing. Yeah. Nobody's building fucking houses. She can do what she wants. Another economic fucking illiterate. If I'm a property developer and I've got a chunk of land to build houses on, and I have a look at this fucking marketplace, I'm not building houses because I've got nobody to sell them to. All that happens is I end up with a plot of land full of houses I can't fucking sell and an empty bank balance. There's a reason why the 300,000 figure was never met. It was a legal requirement in England up until 2022. Quite simply, nobody builds houses that nobody else can fucking buy. The people of England are getting the bull pulled right over their eyes. Right over their eyes. We'll tinker with the edge of this and we'll make it more affordable housing. Fuck off. Starter home in England's up about 250,000, £250,000. A starter home. The average wage in England's 26,000 grand a year. Or 26 grand a year, sorry. Who the fuck? And you need a 10% deposit. Nobody's buying houses. Nobody's buying houses. Builders are not buying building them. But when we talk about economic illiteracy, there's a housing crisis. They have control of the treasury. Open the fucking books. Get the Bank of England to print the money. Use compulsory purchase orders to buy up the land that's been held by those who are banking it and give the money to the council and tell them to start building social housing. Social housing, believe it or not, folks, is what we call cost neutral. And if you need that explained to you, fine. The UK government, who control the Treasury and have access to the Bank of England, tell the Bank of England to print them X amount of money. They, through the Treasury, issue that money to councils. Councils construct social housing. You haven't spent a penny. All you've done is exchange money for an asset that's going to be of the same worth and maybe worth more in the future. You haven't spent nothing. It's cost neutral. It's a bit like when David was explaining money and wealth to you all. I won £1 million in the lottery, and my mate says to me, David says to me, what are you going to do with it, David? How are you going to spend it? So I'm going to go and buy a big house, David. Well, David points out to me, David, you haven't spent it. You've just swapped something for an asset. And you've still got that money because the asset's got that value. And that is why building social housing is cost neutral. It wouldn't cost the government a penny. Because all that's happened is they've printed some debt, and in exchange for that debt, they've got an asset that's just sellable to cover that debt. Cost neutral. So this idea of Angela Rayner and the Labour government of tinkering around the edge of a land definition and planning laws is going to see somehow miraculously 370,000 houses a year built is pie in the fucking sky. And it shows you the stupidity of these people, the economic illiteracy of these people. If I'm building houses right now, I'm only building in places where I know people can afford to buy. Simple as that. And as we've seen by the amount of house builders that have gone out of business lately, there ain't a lot of places like that around. So, what we've learned is Rachel Reeves a liar, Angela Rayner's an idiot, and we know that Starmer's a liar. We also know that the word of the Labour Party as a group, as a collective, as a whole, means fuck all. Nothing. And the lie about the £20 billion black hole, that was an excuse just to tear up their manifesto. Mental. Absolutely mental. Right, now let's move on. Let's move on to, I'm going to jump the right, I'll jump the riots and go back to that last. Okay. So let's move on to the other thing we've learned about Labour, and that is they don't understand industrial relations. In fact, you get right to it, they're either stupid or naive when it comes to industrial relations. Now, as people here in Scotland are aware of this, but people who are watching in England will be more aware of this. And that is, there's been a junior doctor strike going on down in England. Anyway, 5 days in, West Street and trumpets that he's come to a settlement with the junior doctors. The BMA, the British Medical Association, has recommended that junior doctors drop their demand for 35% and accept the 22% that the UK government, our English government, has put on the table for junior doctors in England. So, strikes have been averted, or have they? See, what's interesting about this is, and this is what I'm talking about, naive or stupid. We'll get to the dishonesty behind it in a minute and all, but naive or stupid. They've just settled for 22% with junior doctors. How's the other public servants going to take it? Well, the Royal College of Nursing, they haven't taken it well at all. And they are now in consultation after they settled for something like 6%. They are now in consultation about strike action. And the head of the Royal College of Nurses, Professor Nicola Ranger, she tells the press, we don't begrudge the junior doctors their pay rise, but we want fair play. And it would appear the paramedics and physios and midwives are taking the same attitude. And other trade unions in the public sector are looking at it and saying, what, and you want us to accept 5%? Now you can fuck off. So there may be trouble ahead. Really naive, really stupid. Because when you give one set of public servants 22%, you can bet the arse that the rest of them who have suffered and whose wages went backwards over the same period of time want the same deal. So I'd hate to be on the recommended pay boards for public bodies down that road next year. Oh, or even towards the end of this year. Oh dear. So we've learnt that Labour are dishonest. We've learnt that they're economically illiterate. And we've learnt now that when it comes to industrial relations, they haven't got a fucking Scooby. Not one Scooby. So, and here they're telling us we're going to have a summer of discontent here in Scotland. Dearie. Well, they're new at the game. They've been out of position for a long time now, Labour. But they are showing themselves up to be very, very naive economically illiterate, and deceitful. That's the four things that's the things we've learned since it came to power 4 weeks ago. Done. When it comes to industrial relations, they haven't to get a Scooby. The Chancellor's a liar. The Housing Minister's an idiot. The Foreign Secretary's a liar and an idiot. Hey, well, folks, this has all got after a spiffing start. And to throw more on top of that, of course, let's get back to riots. Shall we? So here we go. Okay, moving on to the big story, the riots. So first up, where have the riots been? Well, right across England, actually, and in Wales. Sorry, in Northern Ireland. But we'll get a wee bit better at that. But if you're living in Scotland or Wales, believe it or not, you would believe it was happening in Scotland and Wales as well. Because the press always say GB, 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 GB. Seem to forget that England isn't GB. But of course, the term England and Great Britain are synonymous with each other and interchangeable. Now, what's caused these riots? People say immigration, people say this, people say that. I'll tell you what's caused it. Identity crisis. I want the people in England to pick up their ears here. Identity crisis. For the last 300 years, England was strolling the earth as if they owned the fucking place. They didn't, of course, the Union did. But that's beside the point. England have been arrogantly striding this planet for 300 years thinking they're a world force. And since the 1960s, that hasn't been true, with the end of empire. And England has been tumbling into an identity crisis ever since, trying to work out what the fuck it's for, who they are. Because the only people who were wiped clean, whose brains and identities were wiped clean by the Great British Experiment, were the people in England who have interchangeable identities between English and British. Whereas the Scots, the Welsh, and the Irish, not the Northern Irish, we'll get to them, and the Irish, we don't have that crisis of identity. We know where our place in the world is. Scotland knows it's a fucking colony. It's treated like a fucking colony instead of a partner in the Union. Wales is treated as if it doesn't fucking exist, a holiday home. And Northern Ireland, well, we'll get to Northern Ireland and its identity crisis shortly, okay? But let's deal with England first, shall we? When you think of the term white supremacist, where does the term come from? The term white supremacist comes from Imperial Europe. But because the people of England, stroke GB, Great Britain, take out the term great, because they were heading up an empire for so long, they had been told for so long that this empire was a good force in the world. As that empire has disappeared, the effects and cause of what that empire did to the world has been hidden from the people of England. So they thought they were civilising the world and bringing them education and trains and all sorts of fucking things. But nobody told the English people about the brutality of the British empire. But when you think about white supremacists, think of the royal family, for example. Every time they visited somewhere and there was 8 fucking natives carrying chairs with these white people sitting on top of them. The great white mama. That very image of the royals, Victoria, getting carried on the shoulders of coloured people is a symbol of white supremacy. As I've said earlier, we do have races here in Scotland. But we were quite aware of our place within the empire. Our place was to administer the empire. And the reason why when Scots go anywhere in the world we're welcomed, because we administered it well, we administered it with kindness. So when you guys come along and have a look at what we were doing, you've got fucking brutal. And that's why when a Scots person goes to another country, they're welcomed. And when an English person goes to another country, there's apprehension. But this identity crisis goes deeper than that, because even after the 1960s, the people in England were still being fooled that they were a world force. And a great example of that was Brexit. Brexit. Let's get Brexit and take our empire back. Empire 2.0. Well, how's this classic? This is how the English people actually thought, believe it or not, folks. And I'm not kidding, I'm always people from England here to hear this. How's this for a classic cookie? Anybody remember this one for Brexit? They need us more than we need them. They need us more than we need them. Remember that one? Or A, we can have our cake and eat theirs. Remember that Brexit cookie? Huh? What a shock it was to the people in England who thought that they need us more than we need them. What a fucking shock it must have been to them when the TCA was signed. It was a bare-ass minimum agreement which was going to see them suffer. And then as they were stamping their feet in annoyance, the European Union turned its back and said, you're at the club now, fuck off, you're no our problem. And then, of course, just to shatter the illusions of the people doing that road a wee bit more. And I don't mean all the people, I mean the uneducated ones, you know, the knuckle drivers that are causing riots. Just as a bigger blow to them. As the brave British buccaneer heads out into the world to regain its empire and to make up for lost trade with its nearest and dearest neighbour, what did the Commonwealth and the rest of the world do? It turned its fucking back. It went, we can't trust you. You people are not trustworthy. You've never been trustworthy. So what's leading to the riots down that road? Identity crisis. England no longer knows what its purpose is, what it's for, and what its place in the world is, or who they are. They don't know. Now let's get to Northern Ireland and why there was riots in Northern Ireland. Well, the identity crisis in Northern Ireland has been there a lot longer than the identity crisis which is coming to the fore in England now. As we know, we have people in Northern Ireland who swear blind they're British and they're no Irish at all. And of course, they were living happily with that delusion until Brexit. And then the British people in Northern Ireland realised with Brexit that Mother England didn't even fucking know who they were, had forgotten about them, had pressed ahead with a Brexit that didn't take them into consideration. And when they did stamp their feet and say, hey, we're British, Mother England looked at them and said, you're Irish, you fuckers, get off the books. So that's what's led to riots in Northern Ireland. The realisation by those people who live there, who think they're British, that they're actually Irish, and Mother England doesn't actually fucking want them. You see, but that identity crisis been going on for a long time. It was settling down. They sort of accepted that wee bit of dual nationality. Then Mother England told me, fuck off. Couldn't they make it up? So two separate identity crises in two separate places with the one cause and for two different reasons. Now, folks, you don't need to believe me on this. I've been watching this for a long time. I knew it was coming. But so did a lot of people. But you don't have to believe me in this because I'm an outside observer. I keep pointing this out. I am an outside observer. But I'm not the only person making these observations. And if you really want to know a wee bit more about England's problems and the identity crisis, then I would suggest you read Irish author Fintan O'Toole's book, We Don't Know Ourselves. And that is about the identity crisis in England and in Northern Ireland. It's a damn fine read. And it is another outside observer looking in. From the 60s sort of onwards, where GB stroke England's been trying to find its place in the world. Scotland's never had to worry about trying to find its place in the world. We don't have a voice in the fucking world. The idiots in Westminster speak for us on the world stage. But as England struggles to find itself in the world, and then it finds out that the whole time its fantasy of a great empire and a beloved monarch and a beloved mother people isn't true at all, and nobody fucking likes them and nobody wants to deal with them because the state itself, not the English people, but the state itself, is dishonest and is not a good a partner on the international stage. This is where England's going to find its feet and realise what England's for. So as I say, you don't have to take my word on where these riots are coming from. This isn't about small boats, folks. This is about white supremacy and England's place in the world. It really is. It's about an identity crisis. The GB project has actually wiped out the English people's identity. That George Cross and that Union Jack is interchangeable for the people. We fly a saltire here. If there's a Union Jack in a municipal building, then there's probably a birthday or something going on. You know, we know who we are. We know we're still a colony. We know that once we go, what's left of the English psyche will fucking explode. But it's going to have to happen if they're ever going to find their way in the world. Really. So, we can talk about all sorts of rubbish about why there is a rioting down that road. Deprivation, poverty, failing economy. The state's failing because the state doesn't know its role anymore. That's how bad it is. The institutions are failing because they don't know their position anymore. Coffee, please. Thank you, Madam Director. So that's the truth of what's happening down that road. All right. All these other factors don't help. Immigration, that's a white supremacy thing. Poverty, that's bad economic management by the idiots that elect into power. The failing of the state. It's because the state hasn't known what it's for a very, very long time now. And apparently the political parties, who are like two cheeks of the same arse and interchangeable, with no real change ever happening, they don't seem to know what the state's for either. So, what's really driving the riots down that road? Identity crisis and the people of England being deceived for so long that their empire was a great and glorious thing and that the world loved them. They're finding out the truth now. Brexit was a hard slap in the arse. The hardest bit about it was probably America, the biggest of the ex-economies and the world's biggest market, the economic giant that it is. Not the world's biggest market, but the world's biggest economy, and the economic giant as it is. And their beloved leaders telling the UK pet poodle or England, shut up, get back in your box, we don't want fuck all to do with you. We get rid of you 275 years ago and we don't want you fucking back again. Or 200 and however many years ago it was. Right, so that's the story of where the riots in England are coming from. It's not always a pretty story. It's a long and it's twisted and it's been coming down the road for a long time. Economic decline and stupidity is added to it. But identity crisis is the cause of it. Okay, let's have a quick look and see what's going on in Israel and in the Middle East. Well, I don't even have to look for that one, folks. America, Ginger Giraffes is here, so she'll know. America dispatched more naval, air force, and men, boots on the ground, to the Middle East as Netanyahu tries hard to widen out this conflict. And I mean, tries hard to widen out this conflict. As the world is turned against Israel and Israel has become more and more insular, with the exception of one or two people, and as Netanyahu's terms comes towards the end, he's facing the jail. The international courts want him. The Israeli economy is failing because of the BDS movement and companies defunding and investment diversion away from Israel. So Netanyahu's trying to cling to power, trying to stay out of jail, and he's widening out the conflict. So the Americans, who will stand by Israel at all costs, are sent in more military might, in the expectation that this conflict will widen out. Expect the same from the UK, because after all, the Westminster government, whether it be Tory, Labour, they're both the US's poodle, and because they're the US's poodle, it lets them pretend that they still have some soft power on the world stage. Fucking don't. I mean, if we look at the genocide in Gaza, the UK's not moving because America's not moving. Simple as that. As for the Ukraine folks, apparently they've just had the delivery of F-16s. Not going to help. Not going to help. Might prolong the war, but it ain't going to help. There's only one way to settle any of these disputes, and that's by diplomacy. But prolonging the meat grinder in the Ukraine, I'm fed up saying this actually, I might just ignore it for now on. But prolonging that war in the Ukraine, yeah, might bug Putin down. But it's still not a war that Ukraine can win. Anyway, folks, that's the bloody hour so quick. I hope you found my insights into some of these subjects interesting. I hope you found them informative. And I hope you found them entertaining. Aye, Gingers, but they've just dispatched another 12 of them to the Red Sea. They have got military naval force all right across the world, Gingers. But they've just directed another 12 boats and a whack of aircraft on carriers into the Red Sea. Right, so I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found it informative. Between the two platforms, we have 246 people watching. That's not bad, folks. That's not bad at all. Anyway, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share across your social media platform. If you're on Facebook, I'm looking at that because there are two different devices going here, folks. If you're on Facebook, hit the like button, hit the share button. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll look after each other. And we'll be back on Thursday to do it all again. I'll be speaking to David tomorrow and we'll start collaborating on Thursday's programme. And hopefully he'll feel like doing a wee cameo on Thursday. Okay, catch you all later. Look after yourselves. Bye for now. Oh, try and switch the devices off.